Okay, welcome to the final part of this analysis module. Where we'll be looking at basically argumentation mistakes that debaters are doing. If you've somehow stumbled upon this video and skipped the previous videos, I sincerely advise you to go back and to watch them, since there's going to be like kind of a recap, but kind of not of what we have explained so far. So I've made a list of like 8 very important things that people seem to forget when they're making arguments, that are more or less the mistakes that people do. And like the solutions to these mistakes were explained previously. But yeah, this is like a recap to basically give you a bit of food for thought in terms of like what are the things that I have problems with and what I should work on. This also most likely be posted after my the self-development how to basically train yourself video, so you can also go and see that to check out ways of improvement and creating a plan. But let's get into it. So the first thing is assertions are your biggest enemy. There is no other way to put it. Even if you are judged by, let's say, a particularly not so good judge, either they're less experienced or they're crazy or they just don't care about burdens and explanations of things, the more you move into this game, the more likely it is you to be judged by someone who's competent, and that someone who's competent to be able to track well, and that being tracked well, to see that you have asserted an explanation or like missed a burden or something, not provide explanation or something like that. It again, like I said in the second video, it's always better to have more explanations rather than less explanations, because at the end of the day you'll be penalized by just explaining things more and more into detail rather than just not having an explanation altogether. Plus, this is essentially what critical thinking is in the end of the day, right? Just asking yourself why something is the way it is and trying to explain it in a comprehensive way is the way to do it. So the number one problem for most debaters, 99% of debaters, is the fact that they're asserting too many things. And by the way, this is not only about argumentation. It can be applied to rebuttal, where people just say a line of rebuttal and don't explain it, to weighing, where people just say the most vulnerable minority, blah, blah, and they don't really explain why we should care about that. So yeah, provide the explanations. Don't just use catchphrases. Secondly is, and this is what, so that I don't seem like I'm bashing only Americans, this is for the European debating circuit particularly, is not having the correct example or even thinking about it. Examples are great because they ground the case in reality. They ground the analysis into something that we can comprehensively understand and get as judges, but also secondly to serve as a persuasive tool when we create arguments, so that the judge can be persuaded on both on an emotional and on a on a logical level. In many of the cases, in order to improve your explanation, in order to make it stronger, is actually to start thinking about what is the relevant example and what truly hits the ball out of the park when we're giving that. So literally, when you are done, for example, finishing a line of analysis the same way as you finished in the previous videos, just asking yourself, okay, what is the example that completely encapsulates this reason? Or when we're looking at impacting, what is the example that particularly encapsulates this harm and sells it on an emotional level? Just asking yourself this question, just thinking about it, already puts you in front of the many debaters that don't really think about it and just say, examples are not that important, yada, yada, yada. They are. And the more you have of them, the more you think about them, the more you crystallize them, the better your arguments are likely to be. So you shouldn't underestimate them. You should add them in prep. You should literally take some time and ask yourself between each other, okay, what's the best example? Towards this? One more thing is also thinking about buzzwords and words that basically encapsulate each reason that you're giving for which it's the same, but like if you, for example, can't think of an example or something like that, you can always just choose a word that's like super relevant that you can utilize as like a headliner so people can understand what you're running. The third and most important, like everything here is the most important thing, but the third thing is not asking yourself why you are running what you're running. And this is basically the problem that most debaters have, which is they just go in the round, they say, okay, we're going to run these arguments. We're not really going to think about it that much. Just so, but as much as we have arguments, it's probably the winning case, but why is that the case? This is basically a super problematic thing, because what debaters end up doing is just going to debate with just some arguments that they have generated, maybe some explanation, maybe some impacts, but they don't necessarily explain plain and simply to the judge, this is why this argument wins the debate. This is the path to victory that we have. This is the reason that we are trying to do what we're trying to do. This is good for both two reasons. The first is, in prep, you can solidify between different ideas that you have and explain to yourself why you are running what you are running in order to win on the particular thing that you are winning. But also secondly, you can communicate that to the judge and establish it and shorten the distance between you, yourself, and the judge. If you look at the other videos, although maybe I'm not doing it as explicitly as I should, and I'll focus more on that in future videos, every time before I built the case in each of the motion breakdowns, I try to basically ask, why am I running this? What is the reason for why running this would mean, for example, me winning the debate? Will this debate, for example, win me the debate? Why is that the case? So don't just blindly go into the round. Try to incorporate this in prep. Even if you, for example, you're at the beginning and you're struggling with generating material and things like that, that doesn't matter, because it's more important for you to have this question so that you can filter out your ideas. Even if, for example, you miss a burden or miss an impact, you should at least try to start doing this. Cool. Which brings us to the fourth thing, which is not caring about impacts. And I have to be very clear here. You cannot do weighing in a debate without impacts. This is illogical, fundamentally. If you think about it, the question for what an impact is why is the argument important? Then weighing is, why is our impact more important than why is our argument more important than their argument? So unless you're talking about mechanistic weighing, which is when you both agree that the impact is important, and you just have to win on whose mechanism reaches that point in terms of likelihood. Unless you're talking about that, there is no way for you to explain, for example, for you to weigh, we're talking about the most vulnerable group, etc., without explaining how the most vulnerable group is harmed. You can't weigh our harms are super intense without explaining why those harms are super intense and visualizing them and things like that. So please treat impacting also as important. Again, sometimes you'll get impacts that are obvious, but in most cases you actually don't really get that much obvious impacts. And you allocating some time to flesh those out, to sell them and to push them is is important for you to do it from a technical perspective within the debate. But there's also just simply the emotional perspective. This is the moment in the speech where you can be most alive, where you can, for example, increase the tone of your voice. You can increase the passion, and truly this is what debating is about, right? Because debating is it's theatrics as well. So you should, you doing this is a way for you to basically sell what you're trying to do and add that stylistic thing and persuade the judge that what you're saying is important. The fifth thing here is just simply not looking at the burdens that you're trying to prove. So this is like we touched upon in the analysis video. Like, you're just saying, okay, why is this true? Well, this must be true because this. But for example, you've forgotten to prove, and that's your problem in your solution, but you, for example, forgotten to prove why your solution is likely, or why the positive analysis that you're trying to manifest is likely, or why the positive analysis that you're manifesting actually solves the problem that you're trying to do. So always looking at what are the inherent burdens of the arguments, and the burden is nothing more complex than just a question. Like, why is X thing the way it is? Like, why is this a problem? Why is this a solution? Why is our solution likely? Why does the solution actually solve the problem? How does it solve the problem? What is a good example of this type of thing? It's just a bunch of questions that after a certain moment you'll be able to kind of more or less memorize them, so that you're able to do what you're trying to do. But the problem is that if you are not looking at them, if you're not thinking in the first place, you're basically screwing yourself over. But this has also a second implication. When you're looking at burdens, it also showcases you a way to divide arguments between easy to prove arguments, those that require like a particularly low burden, just maybe a couple of sentences to prove, and high burden arguments, those that actually require you to give substantial explanation in order to prove what you're trying to prove. Those are like, that way you can filter either the super crazy ideas that you should be that you shouldn't be running, but also like the maybe not so crazy arguments, but that require more explanation to be proven within the debate, and you can focus on more easy to prove intuitive claims that are better. So please look at burdens for these reasons. Finally, is just providing uncomparative arguments or talking about things that don't change. This is a super rampant problem, especially, and I think I have some finger in it as well, because like, what do these debaters do? These debaters stand up and say, I'll give you 5 structural reasons within this round. And in reality, those 5 structural reasons, in reality 2 are relevant, and 3 are ones that either don't change at all, so they remain symmetric, or they just exist there as motivating factors. So in reality, they're harming the probability of your change, or they change kind of, but it's like, again, like second tier type of explanation. So making sure that you provide comparative justification for this is important. So an example for this, and here I can give a personal example, is on the motion, this house believes that I think it was the state should mandate when companies get bailouts that the state should become an owner of the company. This was like the motion, and basically the argument here is that this decreases the probability that companies will get to the bailout position in the first place, because right now they won't be making such wrong decisions. Now, here's the thing. In this debate, I was closing government, and opening government tried to analyze this argument, and the way that they analyzed it was, the reasons companies bankrupt is because of economic crisis, is because of supply chain shocks, is because of technology development. So they just listed a bunch of reasons that are true as to why companies reach the bailout point. But these reasons are not comparative. They remain the same. In both sides of the house, economic crisis will happen. Both sides of the house, supply chain shocks will happen. This is not something that changes in the debate. The actual explanation is that currently, when people know that they will be bailed out, like when companies know that they will be bailed out, this creates a pernicious incentive for them to do risky management, for the management to do risky policies that may have a potential high pay in the later, but have a lot of risk to them. And spoiler alert, a lot of these policies actually lead to companies failing and stuff like that. But because they know that they will be bailed out, this creates a pernicious incentive for them to do this, because they're deemed too big to fail. The policy later changes their incentive system, because now they know that if this were to happen, they have to basically give out their shares to the government, because that's a condition of them being bailed out, which means that they no longer get the benefit of doing the risky policy as a cushion, which means that now they're less likely to do this problematic policy, which creates a deterrent. So this is, I hope this example very clearly visualizes how the first reasons, even though they were proving the burden, proving in brackets, they are uncomparative reasons that don't change. But this reason is a comparative reason that does change. So please be super, super careful, because in reality, you're wasting time and you're helping the opposition, because opposition can stand up and claim, but there are reasons as to why your thing happens anyway, blah, 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 this actually harms you, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, cool. So problem number 7 is just going on rants about stuff. I really tried to phrase this in a more comprehensive way, but every time, especially when I'm doing online comps, I just notice debaters just talk about some stuff. It's as if they're simultaneously talking about the motion, but not exactly. They're just saying some random things that are kind of hit and miss and are kind of not really explanations towards the motion or the inherent arguments or the burdens within the arguments within the case. They just talk about things, which is bad, because ultimately you're doing 7 minutes of concentrated speeches where you're supposed to try to prove something. So the more you go on a rant about things, the more you it's unclear to actually understand what you're talking about, and you're just rambling some stuff, this ultimately just harms you, and people really don't want to give you the victory. So like, be mindful about these things. If you're going on rants, try to, like, I don't know, record yourself, or maybe your partner to tell you things, or just straight up ask the judge, like, is anything of the things that I said relevant? And if the judge says no, then probably you're just ranting about some things, and you're not looking at what is the inherent structure of argument building and doing it this way. Again, this is a super rampant problem. People really need to think about it so that they don't rant about things. And finally, clarity and not caring about it. And I want to firstly start by saying, if you're an ESL speaker, it is super unfortunate that you will be EPL'd. It is super unfortunate that you will be strawmanned. It is super unfortunate that judges will screw you over. I literally got EPL'd this weekend at LSE Open. It's recorded. You guys can literally watch it and see it. Unfortunately, these things happen. Unfortunately, there are just bad judges who judge debate wrongly. The only way for you to counter this and for you to opt in this, and this will be helpful in life, is to just improve your clarity. This may, and I'll have a separate video on it more, I just haven't made it yet. This may require you to, for example, if you have to, really break down what you're saying to the most simplest possible sentences so that the person understands what you're trying to convey to them. There was also a thread on Serious posting about it that I think is pretty cool. And you should also be mindful of, well, maybe you yourself are not understandable. Maybe your accent is super hard to get. This is normal. We all come from different countries, different language barriers. For example, I am not like ashamed to admit this, but every time I judge someone who is from Asia, and if they have a hard accent, it is particularly hard for me to understand this, because it's not an accent that I am very well accustomed to. And I've noticed this through debating them, such teams, like, for example, debating against the Singapore team during Belgrade Worlds, that I do have like a bias to understanding them. And after I watch the re-recordings, now I'm actually understanding what they're saying a bit more. So for like, whenever I'm judging these teams from this part of the world, I'm purposefully trying my best to understand and get what they are saying. I assume it would be the same vice versa. So if a person from there is judging an Eastern European, then maybe we would sound strange to them as well. The point is, try to improve your language and pronunciation. If that means literally maybe consuming yourself with English language media, if this means maybe talking in English about a certain time of the day, if this means, for example, reading about particular words, like going into like a dictionary and reading that, all of this really helps you, will help you in the long term. It is an unfortunate reality, but actually this is most likely the best thing that could happen to you, because I assume if you're ESL, you're also most likely from the part of the world that's not from Western Europe and things like that, the one that I also view myself as not being a part of Western Europe. And actually, like, this later can help you out with jobs and stuff like that, because you're, able to speak more understandably. Honestly, debating helped me out professionally a lot more, because now I can go to interviews and I can talk with people super clearly, and they like that. But yeah, clarity. Think about clarity. Again, leave your ego at the door. Try to sound as clear as possible, and don't like abuse it and just say, oh, it's ESL bias. It is ESL bias most likely, but it doesn't matter. If you want to succeed, you have to do it this way. But also, many EPL teams that I also listen to, I truly don't get what they're saying. Maybe EPL judges get them, but many of these cases, I just want to ask them the question, like when I'm judging them, can you just say what you're saying, but in 2 sentences, super clearly, so I can get what you're trying to explain to me? Ultimately, I do, but my point is, like, it cuts both ways. So these are like the 8 typical argumentation mistakes or analysis mistakes that you should focus on improving. Hope this module was helpful. I'll probably make another one like this for judging. And yeah, see you in the next video.